about something much more abstract.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess obviously you can wear a dress, you can sit on a chair, but there's a case where you can use art for different purposes, and maybe that's the other risk, that coming from that background, there's a sense within a certain artistic or critical community that the art is, kind of back to your kind of curators, designers, that it's too usable and too sort of, how to describe it, too literal in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you position, because art can be used by cities for Olympics and be used by brands to advertise themselves. There's a very clear way that art can be useful. Do you fear that, or do you kind of flee from it?
I think I do. I mean, I do agree with that. That is happening. But I think in our case, I think it's. I feel that we do have a commercial side to what we do. There's the idea of fashion collection, but in a way, I think that a lot of the time when we do, gallery shows or museum shows, I think in a way we're showing the monuments of what the collection could have come from. So what's happened for me is that you can have this sort of the core, let's say, and then everything else could be related to it. And even if it leads to something really like basic, there's still some connection to it. So in a way, that's been my aim. But yes, generally, I think the difference between art and design is that design is part of an industrial process. And, it leads to products you can use. But you can also argue that art is getting, a lot of artwork can be industrially produced nowadays as well. Mm-hmm. So I think it's, it's sort of a thesis, really. I think too long to discuss.
Exactly. Can I bring us back, and then we'll open up, I think, to some questions. But to get back to the specifics of this show, it struck me recently that the show in some ways is a kind of homage to Istanbul, isn't it, in terms of the hybrid nature of the content of this exhibition. And maybe I'm influenced by the way that you made it. I knew during the summer you worked very hard to pull things together and worked with an orchestra in Istanbul. And you always spoke very highly. You had this kind of big task of making this thing. You spoke very highly about how rich and how accommodating and how easy Istanbul was as a place.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think it was like, I think it became that, without me even intending, let's say. But I think, we shot it in this old theater there on the Asian side. And, yes, it's one of my favorite cities, what can I say? And I find it, more interesting than most European cities.
Why is that?
Why?
Mm-hmm. Well, every time I see you, you're telling me I've got to go to Istanbul. I mean,
well, because it's just, I think that everyone that I've taken there have loved it. And it's so, it's such a spontaneous city. And it's so, you never know what waits around the corner, and it's really full of surprises. And it's super, in some ways really liberal, and then certain areas are not. But I think, I don't know, it's sort of a place where you can just enjoy the smallest things, like even having a coffee becomes an enjoyable thing. Or, I don't know, I think there's something about that region generally. I think it's that sort of Southeast Europe that, I feel maybe that people spend longer doing things that you would not have time for here. Mm-hmm. So even eating a proper lunch is something there that you don't just grab a sandwich here like from Marks and Spencer. So I think it's like there's, I don't know, maybe each moment lived seems more precious somehow.
Wow.
We have a large and informed audience here. Can I ask if people have questions or points they want to make? Richard?
I just want to say what an utter pleasure this is. Yeah. And this is like lunch, and I know exactly what you just meant. Mm-hmm. But I actually want to ask a question, which is sort of one end is a little bit kind of pragmatic, and the other end is personal, which is it a handicap? I mean, I know a little bit about fashion business, but is it a handicap? It's quite often a handicap for artists to be articulate. Is it a handicap to be as articulate as you are in fashion?
Wow.
I mean, I'll put it another way. Is it chicer or kind of more how it goes, to have you know, the stuff that art students, it's suggested to art students, you know, the talent, just pause on something, and don't worry about being able to say good morning to anyone. And we'll go back one step, actually. The reason you have to go to Istanbul is this is a fucking island. And another thing about Istanbul is it's the very opposite of an island. Sorry, that's...
Well, it's the ultimate kind of mixture of kind of all different races you can imagine. I mean, about being articulate, that's a really interesting point. You know, I wasn't that articulate when I was younger.
When did it start?
I think, you know, when it started was when you have to find words to express your ideas to another. That's when your ideas get clearer, and it's actually it's a process that makes things clearer for you as well. So when an abstraction has to be explained, because I was always a visual person, really, growing up as well, and then obviously I started to read in, you know, as a sort of mid-teenager kind of era, and.
Intellectual household?
No, I'm really not a product of my parents. I think that they are. They have my father has the curiosity I have, and maybe I have certain things, definitely similarities. But I was really raised on my own. I went to boarding schools, and both my parents were remarried, so I never had that nuclear family thing. But I think it's my curiosity that drives me, and I think that I think language for me is a lot to do with reading,
This kind of
as in.
reading.
Reading books, yeah, reading. So I think, but really what I can say is that it was an attempt to, when you had to explain your ideas, you also explained them to yourself. And that's what happened to me, I think.
I just wanted to add to that we've just experienced a period, certainly in fashion, of a kind of embarrassment about intellectualism and kind of trying to make all the magazines more tabloid and more resistant to conceptualization. These last 5 years of style press become very commercial. And you know, during that time, it's really clear to see who are the intellectuals, because they're the people that are always asked on Newsnight to defend fashion or any other, you know, somebody dies. And you are one of those people that is the spokesperson, along with maybe Nick Knight, the kind of very articulate, learned, bright people. And I just wonder about how you feel about that role.
I never thought about it, to be honest. I never thought of myself as anything. I've just, like, really, I'm an ideas person, and I talk about my ideas. I don't think of myself as a representative of anything, in a way, apart from the work that I do. I think that there are definitely people like yourself as well, and also there are other fashion academics, let's say, who actually don't have one foot in the sort of more commercial side of things or business side of things. I think you're unique in that sense. Because a lot of the academics don't, which is, I think, in a way, a lot of them they stay in academy. And there are people like Caroline Evans, you know, Judith Clark, Valerie Steele. So I think, in a way, one thing I could say is that if I could also be somebody that could be sort of to create a connection between those people and the real industry side of things, or even this is an industry as well, in a way. What the scenario we're in is part of an industry too. If we can connect, I think there are a lot of really talented people in this country who stay, you know, with their ideas, and they could never really get things produced. But I think that I see people like yourselves or people like Caroline as part of what we do, as part of the process that we create. And I always say this to writers as well, that I think that they're an extension of the work that we do. So we're all part of the same process. But there are definitely a lot of academics in fashion. Well, not a lot, but let's say enough people that I don't think are connected enough to practice. And I find that connection of academia and practice super exciting. So I guess if I could be a catalyst, partly, although I don't consider myself an academic, but let's say because of the kind of work I do, if I could be a catalyst for that connection, you know, that would be great.
Just the same thing
I just
happening.
have the clunky end of my question, because it joins completely with what we're talking about.
Yeah, please.
Which is...
As long as you say nice things, you can keep...
What?
As long as you say nice things about the situation, you can keep...
I was thinking about about proximities, and I was imagining, I was imagining you in St Martin's, and I don't know whether you were in the building that I think you would have been in.
Yeah, I was in the old. Yeah.
Which is a famous building.
Yes.
Proximity.
Yeah.
So it's double and chips in Denmark Street. And,
yeah.
You know, a second-hand book of foils and.
Yeah, all that.
And you know, as Glenn Baxter said at Goldsmiths, if there's somebody on the staircase carrying a bag of cement, they'll be in textiles.
Yeah.
That, you know, which is to me, that's an art school. You know, and you know, it's as if everyone can smell everything, and you know, there's a little bit of something written on the door, you know, every sculpture or something. What I want to know is, was that loose enough, or what? There's a feeling that you got something out of that.
Yes, I really went to an art school where there happened to be a fashion department, to be honest. And because a lot of my friends were from sculpture, and I'd go in their corner, they'd come to my corner, we'd sit for hours and chat, go out for meals. Because since we left, it's become a lot more, you know, segregated and much more sort of, there isn't a Dave's bar anymore where everybody interacted. So I think we were last of that generation where I can truly say I went to an art school, and with the you know, grotty floorboards to, you know, everything really about it. And I think, you know, I said this before, that we really worked, like, not just me, but there's a generation of us that really worked like body art, in a way, fashion or body artists, where we really were making. I think, I mean, even our graduation show, I think I still can remember it. Every single person had their own character and their own style, and it was, you know, super strong. And I think that, you know, when I first graduated, you know, I was making like surgical stuff and surgical corsets and this kind of work that I don't think they could have imagined the designer doing. So I think really our education was unique. But it wasn't the tuition that made it what it was. It was really the choice of the students that were taken and the way we interacted with each other. That was really the education, not the facilities or the tutors. It was the way that the students were chosen. Every single person was so different.
To ask a very controversial question, though, don't you think that the industry has changed since 1993? Do you think that what you came out with, although obviously it's your ability to bootstrap up ideas and be able to think, not just work, but the division of labour that you're talking about, or the kind of segregation of roles, is writ large in the industry, you know, where you had kind of just general auteurs. You now have to be far more specific, and I wonder whether that kind of broad ideas alone training is enough to equip somebody to go into an atelier now, where they need to know about media, they need to know about, you know, many other things that you didn't have
it's definitely evolved immensely, but it's peculiar because I think that you know, a lot of people aren't nurtured really in, you know, who have that creativity, and it could be nurtured, and you can learn also about the, you know, the new emerging world and combine the two. Sure. I think that the way that a lot of the kind of work that we were doing, I think that you see it in its kind of, how can I put it, you know, certain, like, let's say, performers or artists, like singers, let's say, when they embody the kind of world that we were from, then the mass gets to, like, you know, gets to learn about them. And but actually, these things have been happening for years. And so, you know, if you have like a Lady Gaga doing something that it seems controversial, I'm thinking, God, I was doing that when I was at college, you know. And, you know, it seems like...
Which part of it?
Well, I won't go into that, but I think it basically, it's like, you know, there are certain things in the media that I feel that if there's a person that amplifies, you know, ideas that a lot of people are alien to, in a way, you know, you have... There is definitely sort of people who speak loudly about things, and there are ideas that have been happening for years that really stay within small circles. And I think that there's definitely a group of us from St Martin's, and I still am in touch with those people, you know, and I feel it was really sort of really